Okay, so welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be discussing what's going to be our weapon against the Sicilian with white. So as we know, we want to play e4, play the Italian, and play a nice game. But unfortunately, sometimes people will want to play something different. We would love e4, e5, but unfortunately, people sometimes play the Sicilian. Um, we've talked about other variations that they might play. We've talked about the French, the what we'll play if they play e4, e5. We've talked about the Scandinavian, the Karo Khan, and the last truly major option that they may choose is to play c5. That's the last truly major option that they have at their disposal. Um, I mean, if they play something like knight f6, I mean, just kick out the knight. This is called Alekhein's defense, but this kind of position, it's all you need to do, and well, there's nothing else here. Just develop normally at that point. But anyway, so as we know, the main thing that in this position that they may possibly play is to play c5. Now, against the Sicilian, we have many options, but we are going to be using the Grand Prix attack, which starts off with knight c3. Officially, this is called the Close Sicilian, not yet called the Grand Prix. The Grand Prix only happens once we play the move f4. Now, why do we play f4? Well, the move f4, like obviously it takes control over the e5 square. It targets the center. It allows us to develop our knight without having to put it behind. And long term, when we castle, we can move our rook this way. Once the f pawn is moved, it allows us to move our rook and eventually our queen and etc. So we have those kinds of options available to us after f4. But now here they have many options. Um, Here itself, right? I'll just show you a couple of moves that they could potentially play. They have uh, d6, knight c6. They have g6. They have e6. They have a6. They have many moves here. They also have e5 even. E5 is also another variation. And against e5, actually, you can still play f4. I'll show that line as well. But there's many different lines. So I'm going to first discuss main line 1, which is d6, main line 2, which is knight c6, main line 3, which is uh, sorry, yeah, main line 3, which is g6, main line 4, which is e6, and main line 5, which is a6. So I'm gonna discuss each of these. This is gonna be um, a relatively longer video because there's a lot to do here and there's a lot to know. So first of all, I'm just showing that I showed this position at the start. And the reason for this is going to be, in general, the setup for our opening. We're going to have pawn on e4, on the f4. We're going to castle kingside most scenarios. We're going to have a4. The reason behind a4 is to prevent a6, b5. Um, you know, they'll play that a lot to try and kick out this bishop. They might play d5 to kick out this bishop. Another thing to see that the bishop can also go to b5 rather than c4, but I prefer us, and I prefer us to be going with c4 rather than b5. Uh, Reasons being, number one, eventually there's some lines where you can sacrifice the bishop for this pawn and prevent them castling, and the other reason is it aligns more with our traditional play with the Italian. So I feel it's you'll have an easier time playing this line, even though b5 is also completely fine. So that's the main reason I've opted to in this video to discuss bishop c5 lines more than bishop b5. Um, Other than that, the queen moves to e1, and this is honestly the crux, the crux of this opening. You have to always play queen to e1. There is almost never a scenario where you don't play queen to e1 and the reason we play queen to e1 is long term, right? Long term is our idea is to attack the king side. The king is going to be around here with his pawns. There may be a knight here. What we want to be able to play is we want to play g4, h4, f4, f5, queen along this way, like we may not h4 immediately. We want to play like rook like this. We may not play the h pawn actually. We want to play, you know, queen this way, f, g, rooks this way, bishop out, bishop to trade potentially if they fianchetto. This is the ideas that we want to play. So we want to play the queen to e1 the to allow the queen to access the king side. If we just keep the queen on d1, it's a lot harder because then we'd have to move the knight, and not only do we have to move the knight, in a lot of fianchetto lines, there's a pawn here. So yeah, this is the main idea of the position. A4 again, like I said, is to prevent a6 b5. This dark squared bishop traditionally goes on this square, and it can be rerouted this way, or usually it gets traded off for the fianchettoed bishop. That's one of the ideas. This rook is just existing. This knight usually is defending the center, holding it down. This bishop may be traded off eventually for a knight. But yeah, that's the main concepts for most of the pieces in this position. Eventually, sometimes in some positions, the king may move to h1. If you're unable to do this rook left fully, one of the ideas is to play, for example, king h1. Sorry, yeah, it's to play like king h1, and if you're not able to do this rook left for whatever reason, one of the ideas is to play like rook g1 here, g4. Oh, oops. Yeah, this kind of idea. This is one of the potential things that you could play in this position. You'd want to be able to, uh, you know, you'd want to be flexible, and king h1 usually allows flexibility. But yeah, the main moves in this position: queen e1 to target the dark squares, the rook to target the king, the bishop to trade off a fianchettoed bishop, and the pawns to attack f5, etc. So this is the general position, and I want you to take a very good cold hard look at this position and realize and remember what the idea of every piece is and um, what their purpose is. So we're not just going to be memorizing a ton of lines because, well, quite frankly, we're not grandmasters, and also we have lives. Okay, we wanna enjoy playing chess, and to enjoy playing chess, we need to have ideas of what we're going to do in case our opponent plays, but at the same time, we don't want to just memorize it every single possible line. And we're going to just take a look at ideas, various types of positions, and yeah, we'll see about what to do. So I'm going to first start off. I'm actually going to start off with this line of knight c3 and knight c6. I'm going to start off with this line. The reason behind it is this is probably the most common if you look at the database of positions. Sorry. If you look at the database of positions, knight c6 is the most common move here. So that's why I'm going to start off with knight c6, d6, e6, a6, and then g6. Every other move virtually never happens, so there's no point in discussing any other move. And quite frankly, any other move is quite bad because if they play anything else, let's just say they play something ridiculous. Let's say they play b here, right? If they play b6, just quickly, I'm just going to quickly over this. Any other move is quite bad, and you can just play your normal ideas. Play your normal idea of what we're gonna of your development. They'll try to do something like this. Maybe you can go for d4, which you don't traditionally do in the Grand Prix, but just as an example, any other move is not great because you've developed nicely. Sure, they have a decent bishop in this case, but you have a much stronger center. You have a much more logical development, and yeah, you can even castle queenside in this position. This is just an example. There's many options here, and not all of them are great for black, but in general, these are what you're going to face. So people are going to try and stick with their normal theory. People are going to stick with what they're used to, and yeah. So the most traditional of those is knight c6. So with knight c6, you just play f4, continue your attack, and now it's officially the Grand Prix attack, right? Now it's actually now we're in the actual opening. Here they have many moves. Also, I want you to know something. The engine may say that this position is slightly worse or it's equal for black. Um, but what you need to realize is oftentimes just because the engine says something doesn't mean it's true. And what I mean by that is it'll say that it's equal if you play this one very specific, incredibly difficult to find line, and we're not going to see that very often. Uh, you'll see what I mean in a bit. F4, D6, knight F3, knight C6, knight F6. Just this traditional normal development. Um, you play your bishop. They can offer. Sorry, this is yeah. There's a line here where if they take, it's not winning immediately. If they take this bishop if they take this pawn with the idea of this, um, they'll take it with this kind of an idea. Uh, you can opt to trade it, but this is actually not great for you. What you should go for is to develop your knight and do this kind of thing. That's why they would potentially take this pawn. That's the line I just want to discuss. But more than likely, if they take this pawn, you just have to sacrifice this bishop, as I was mentioning. And after takes, they may have a stronger center, but well, their king is stuck here. This position is equal, but is it equal? It's equal, but it's leaning towards you because you have much clearer ideas. You have much clearer ideas. You're gonna castle. Just as an example, you're gonna castle. They can play d6. You can play ultra aggressively if you really want to. You can play your g4, and if they take, you just take. But um, they have to be on the defensive here. You have a lot of initiative. You have a lot of attacking. Their pieces are a bit stuck. And here again, the engine may say it's equal, but it's not really. It's really not. You have much better chances. Just as a quick example, just wanted to show that. Um, yeah. So anyway, um, yeah. The main one of the main moves I want to talk about is uh, where is it? Sorry. Yeah, 9 6. Um, they can opt for that, but more than likely they're just going to play e6. And when they play e6, what you need to realize is, okay, they're trying to play for d5. That's their goal. They're trying to play for d5 in this position. And when they play for d5, more times than not, you do not take the pawn. Um, I'll just show you an example. Let's say you castle and they play d5. Well, when they castle, when they play d5, taking is not a good option for you. And the reason is very simple. Even if you say, oh, takes, I can have this rook check. It's not particularly ideal because they can just get a much better position very quickly. They'll have d4. Um, you have to move your knight out. Um, and yeah, they can very quickly equalize, and you won't really have a big attack. You'll just have a weak f pawn without much compensation. Your bishop won't be able to go out and trade. You won't be able to ever play f5. This is just the reason why it's not necessarily uh, a great idea to play to take the pawn if they play for d5. So this is just one of the things. Yeah, so that's why in this kind of position, um, I recommend that you play d3 rather than castle. Because now if they try and play d5, you can just move the bishop here. You see, remember, one of these ideas that I mentioned in the previous position is um, you can often trade this light squared bishop for the knight. Why do we trade the light squared bishop? Very similar principle. Look at what color most of our pawns are on. Most of our pawns are on light squares, so we don't want to keep a light squared bishop, right? That should seem intuitive enough. Um, so this is if they play. This is just a very key engine example. Um, trade. You play the knight here. You take their bishop, and again, key move f5. Now here in this position, it may look, oh, they're winning a pawn, but takes, you take this pawn. They trade, you play bishop here. This is a quick example. Again, this position may seem equal. It may seem equal on the computer, but you have significantly better chances. Like, I mean, if they just decide to just trade everything, This is an example. Rook e1. Um, Now they can castle kingside. You can trade. Who is more active in this position? This is known as a heavy piece endgame when there's no minor pieces left. In this kind of scenario where you just trade everything, we just trade absolutely everything. You may think, oh, this is equal, which it is according to the engine, but who has better chances? Is you. White has better chances in this kind of position, and this is one of the best engine lines against the Grand Prix. So you have very good chances here by simply choosing to go with this kind of an attack. They'll play queen here. You know, the idea behind this position is now okay. You have four pawns against three on the queen side. Their c5 pawn is a bit weak, and you know their rook is not active. You can eventually just trade this pawn, get rid of it, and then like start targeting these ones. Like just if they don't play the right way, you just play just as an example. Oh, sorry, that comes to check. Again, this is another idea behind King H1. If they just play this incorrectly, you can play like for this kind of a thing. And if they just don't play the right way, you can eventually just win these pawns, um, and have just a much better endgame. Just okay, according to the engine, there's something here. This is the reason this is losing is because you have a checkmate threat. So before you go for that, you play h3. They have to try and defend this pawn. If they don't, like you can even opt for this. This is a very nice rook endgame. Obviously they won't take, but this is if you get this, this is a very nice rook endgame. You have a passed pawn. You have a king that you can activate very easily, and yeah, this is just a nice kind of an endgame that you can potentially get. But again, what were the key ideas that we just went over in this position in this order of moves? One of the key ideas was, well, you you try to trade off the light squared bishop. You play f5 at some point. You you develop your on your king side. You play uh, you castle king side. You play d3 defending it. You eventually move your bishop out. Just an example. There's a lot of these kinds of ideas in the Grand Prix. Um, so typically against knight c6, you just play your moves. You just play your move order. And another thing I would like to mention is sometimes um, your opponent may really just go for like after bishop c5, for example, they may go for like g6. And if they go for g6, this is a very nice line that I have over here, and I'd like to show you. Is you castle g7, d3 castles. You play queen e1. Remember, idea behind queen e1. If they castle kingside, is to play eventually queen here, move your rook this way, trade off this bishop. So they play like this. We play f5 immediately, shutting them down. And if they choose to go for this, well, your life just got a whole lot easier. You can play knight here. You can play your rooks. Um, you have a very, very nice time here. You can just you can just have a much better position. Just as an example, oh, they won't play that, but like they're a bit stuck here. Um, you are gonna have significantly more activity. You can trade off this if you really want to. You can move your queen after that here, and this bishop can even trade for the knight. Not even the bishop. The bishop can trade for the knight and just go for it. You can have a lot of potential. You have a lot of potential in this position if they don't, if they just take it. But they most likely they won't take it, right? No one takes that kind of position, that kind of pawn. So they'll instead trade the knight off, and then you take with the rook. Again, same idea. Move the rook here. Go for this, right? That's key idea in this position. Now at knight d4, you play the rook here. It may look, oh my god, I blundered a fork. Oh no, but you didn't. You didn't blunder fork. You play queen here. They can take a full rook. It doesn't matter. If they take the full rook, guess what? You take the pawn. They take the pawn, you go for this. Knight to d5. Why do you go for knight d5? Because this knight is the only thing defending checkmate. This knight is the only thing preventing checkmate. They play rook here. You take, they take, you just win back the bishop. And even though it may seem, oh, I'm 3 points of material down, you are completely winning. +4 in this position. Why is it +4? The king is nowhere to be found. The king is just stuck here in the middle. The knight is going to be lost. Um, their rook is attacked. It has no safe square. If it decides to go for something like this, you play queen, you play bishop here. There, it's a pin. Um, you just have so much activity, and their king is just so unsafe that you can just beat down a lot of material and win these kinds of positions. But again, what is the goal behind all this? What was the idea behind all of this? Like, I don't expect you to memorize this 19 moves of theory, but you have to understand that in the Grand Prix, it's a very dynamic opening. And what I mean by dynamic is you can be willing to give away material for a strong attack. If you really want to play for a win in the Grand Prix, you have to be willing to give away sometimes. Sometimes you have to be willing to give away material for a really good and strong attack. And again, over here they can't. The reason they can't take with the pawn is obviously they're pinned. But if they don't take, if they just play something else, then you're just threatening mate very, very soon. If you just literally if they just play something else, just say they play something useless to this, takes, they have to take. Or if they don't take, it's even worse. If they take, checkmate. It's over. Game is over. But so yeah, that's why they will have to take with H pawn if in this kind of a position. Um, it gets it gets a bit hectic. It gets really hectic in these kinds of positions. Instead of f5 now, as I mentioned, g takes f5. This is just bad for them. Another move they can opt for is after rook takes knight e4. They can actually they after this they may not necessarily take. They may realize, oh, there's a bit of a danger here. They'll play something like h5, and if they play something like h5 takes, again, queen. The idea behind the queen, they still can't take. Sorry, they won't even play h5. They'll play something potentially like an e6, like an e6 here. They play an e6, you know, and takes. It's still a very similar idea. It's a lot harder to defend than you think. This idea is a lot harder to defend than you think. When the queen on e1, you have plenty of ideas to try and win um, this kind of a game. Okay, now back to this position. What if they play g6? This is another potential idea. G6 is one of the potential moves they can play. As I've mentioned here, I've written down all the moves. G6 is another very normal idea. With G6, the computer will say play D4 immediately, but I quite frankly disagree with that. I say just continue. Sorry, just lost my head there. Um, with G6 specifically, sorry, this is the main move you want to play. This is the one time where you break the principle and you play D4 immediately. And the reason you do is because if they just play Bishop G7 here, you just take. You just take. And the reason you take is if they play any other move other than Bishop takes, if they play, for example, Queen A5, which is one of the moves here, Bishop D2, they take, you play knight to the center, knight D4, knight D5. The idea behind knight D5 is you're threatening bishop here and knight to C7, which will fork. Now, let's say they get greedy here and they take the pawn, which they really shouldn't do, but they might. You play rook b1 first. After rook b1, if they just go here or go back, it makes no difference. They just go here. You play bishop to b4, like I mentioned. Now, you may think, oops, you blundered this. No, you didn't. You play king e2. After they move here, you move back, you get the skewer. They can take, and you might think, oh, they're defending. They play knight here or f6. You win this. Remember this idea. Things can get very bad very fast in the Grand Prix for black if they just don't play the right thing. If they just go for this kind of an idea after you play d4, if they just stick with their normal game plan of bishop g7, they'll struggle, and they'll struggle because you have to again sacrifice some material for some activity, which will win you the game. But most common you'll see cd4, and after cd4 you just do queen d4, normal development, knight f6, bishop e3, knight c6, queen d2. They'll try and win this bishop, and it's important you don't give up your dark squared bishop for this knight if they're planning to fianchetto. If they're trying to fianchetto, then you want to just keep the bishop on the board, and keeping the bishop on the board allows you to eventually trade it for the bishop. Um, trading for the bishop is significantly better because the bishop is one of the main defenders of the king, and if you get rid of the bishop, they only just have a bunch of light square weaknesses, and it's just not great for them. So knight bishop f4, d6, h3. Just as a quick example, they just have to run back, and you can castle long in this kind of position. You can play bishop here immediately. That's another option. If you just play bishop, if after this if you just play like bishop here immediately, and they can just never castle. They can just never castle. Just as an example, this is one of your main lines in this position. In against g6 specifically, I recommend d4. I got a bit mixed up in the beginning. In general, like I mentioned, your idea should be f4, knight f6, knight f3, d3. Trade off this bishop, queen e1. Like this should be your main idea in the Grand Prix. But against g6, specifically, play d4. And the reason you play d4 is there's a lot of tactics. There's a lot of very nice ways for it to go for you. And if they play anything else other than those two moves, just knight f6, well, they're just losing. I mean, you're up 1+1 immediately. You can kick out the knight. The knight has to go back or go here, and you can even opt for just bullying the knight. Guess what? It's just stuck here. If you want to play ultra aggressive, not f3, you can play ultra aggressive and just go for something like this. It's a bit dangerous. It's a bit dangerous to play like this, but this is just an example of what you could do. If they play any other move, it's bad for them. These are the only two moves they can play. They have to either take, and if they take this pawn, you just end up with a slightly better position for yourself because they just have to, be a bit more on the defensive. You get a much more you get much more normal development. Just like here, for example, all their pieces are like stuck except the two knights. Their bishop is gonna, even though their bishop may eventually go here, you can always trade it off. You can castle queenside. You can play bishop c4 again. You can target the king wherever it goes. Sometimes they may opt to play queenside. You may have queenside versus queenside. But yeah, against g6, best move is just d4 purely because of the amount of tactics that are there. There's also a very good video by I am Eric Rosen, where he utilizes a lot of lines on d4. If you want to go a bit more in depth for that, I really recommend you check out that video. It gives it goes far more in depth than I can, and also it's a really useful video on this d4 kind of line. And it talks about not only g6 positions, it also talks about knight c3, knight c6, and other things among those lines. It's a good video. I also recommend you check that one out. But anyway, let's go back to one of our main ideas with a6. Okay, a6. Now, what is the idea of a6? The idea of a6 is to play b5. They're gonna play on the queen side. This is something you might not see. It's slightly less common, but it's something that is somewhat often played. It's played about 40% of the time, but it's a bit rare. It's a bit rarer of an idea at our level because you just completely open up the queen side immediately, and that can lead to a lot of threats. I'll just go over an example real quick. If they play a6, one of your best ideas and your best friend is to just play a4. The engine may not like a4, but I recommend a4. And the reason I really recommend a4 is because, well, obviously they can no longer play b5. If they play b5, you just take. But the other reason is By playing a4, you still keep most of your ideas. If they just go for this, you can still continue with your Grand Prix. If they don't, if you don't play a4 and you play just f5 immediately, this is slightly worse for you, because they can play b5 immediately, and you lose a lot of your ideas. You have to go into a bit of more unknown territory with d4. This is what I wanted to say when I was talking about the g6 line. I had two ideas mixed up. This is the what I was trying to talk about is you don't want to go for this, even though the engine may recommend it, because this is a bit more of an unknown territory for you. This is a bit, although it's still decent position, it's a bit more of an unknown territory. By playing f4, it allows you to maintain your game plan, knight f6, knight f3. If they just go for the bishop here, um, it's yeah, again, it's a bit more of an unknown territory. The best move, in my opinion, is to play a4, because now if they play knight c6 and you play f4 and they just do something like they just play something like knight here, you just push, they have to go back. Just as an example, they just waste their move. So most people might not go for that. Instead, they might go for something. Um, they might go for something like e6. And if they go for e6, you just, again, normal development, normal ideas. d5 is a very, very key idea that is often in these positions. You do not take this pawn, right? I'm assuming you've already watched Gotham's video about the Grand Prix. And if you have, then you'll know he really emphasizes you do not take this pawn. And it's with good reason. If you take this pawn, you are completely lost. Your position is almost gone, because you now have to go for something like let's say you try to continue with your normal idea of d3. Well, once you do something like this is a quick example of a normal potential game that can happen. Um, you have nothing. Your bishop is stuck permanently because you no longer have this threat of uh, f5 and queen here. You're about a lot more stuck, because the e6 pawn that was there before you took it was blocking in their light squared bishop. By taking this pawn, in the long term you've opened it up, and that's not great for you. You are lost in this position. It may only be minus 1.2 or whatever, but in my opinion, if you take, you are lost on move 6. If you take that pawn, you should not take the pawn. What you should do is, again, just stick with the normal game plan. Play d3. With d3, if they have many other options, they play knight here, just as an example. I personally recommend bishop here. And again, in this specific a6 line, um, you lock in your bishop a bit. So you can opt for something like g3, bishop g2, and castle, and go for that. That's one of the ways you can opt to play this position. But the reason you play d3 and are willing to lock in your bishop is because your bishop has nowhere to go. The main two positions for the bishop is either c4 or c5, and with d5 a6, it just loses this position. So even though you may be locking in your bishop a bit, it's worth it. In the long term, you can still eventually trade off this bishop, or you can play a bit more of like a Leningrad Dutch. Like, I'm sure since you're a Dutch player, you're a bit more used to this kind of thing. But you can opt for that, or uh, you can opt a lot more into this line I'm mentioning. Bishop e2, they can go for a fianchetto. If they don't go for a fianchetto and they just go for bishop d7, normal development, you just castle. And you may potentially end up in a situation where they castle queenside. Um, not in this position, because let me just do this line. The reason they don't do it in this position is uh, you have this idea called a fishing pole. This is called a fishing pole by you give away a knight to open up a file for a rook, and you just have, look at all the black pieces. The king is just stuck. All the pieces are stuck around the king, and you have far more open lines. There's no direct pawns in front of the king other than this one. Um, yeah, so they wouldn't play that immediately. They wouldn't play that pawn immediately, but they wouldn't castle immediately. But you can potentially end up in a situation where they do. If they play let's say they play here. I recommend queen. Okay, well, okay, bishop d1. Um, f6, knight here, takes. Now they might castle. Again, now the reason they're castling now after trading off this knight is because you no longer have this fishing pole idea. But yeah, you may end up in this kind of a position, and this position is honestly okay. Like, I'd say it's completely equal. Um, the reason this position is fine is because you have the two bishops. Long term, after trading off a lot of the pawns, the bishops will really wake up and become a lot more powerful. And another thing is you can choose to lock up the center. And when you lock up the center, you have ideas of pushing pawns on the queen side, and eventually having a winning idea. If they play like here, for example, you can play c3, bishop here, bishop here. Just as a couple of examples. I'm just gonna do a couple of examples. Let it think. Let engine think. You can. I wouldn't open it up. I'll play King H1. Yeah, King H1 is a good idea. Again, like I mentioned before, King H1. But the difference, um, with this King H1 and the previous King H1 is, the previous King H1 was more so for this idea. You don't attack the king side if there's no king. You want to go where the king is, and if they just do something like this, then again you just open up the side of the board. Oh, you don't take. You play this first, and now you play. I prefer queen here. You can give up this pawn, and even though you're technically playing a pawn down in this position, look at their king again. There's a lot of lines here where you're just playing ultra aggressive. Um, and if it doesn't go for these ultra aggressive lines where you're down two pawns but have material, if you just go for a normal plain old line in the Grand Prix Sicilian, if they just opt for something a lot more normal, I'm just gonna play a very traditional normal variation. So I'll just play something like this. You castle here. That's a d3. They castle. You play queen e1. Your ideas are very similar to what they were before. Um, this is an example. Like this is a position that you may have. This position is completely fine for both you and them. This is a relatively equal position. Um, yeah, there's not much else to say here, quite frankly. This is a very nice opening in the sense that it allows you both a normal structure. It allows you normal development, but it also gives you a lot of winning ideas early on, uh, if you opt for it. If you opt for if you opt for going for something like Queen E1 and going this way, you can. And if you don't, well, you can just develop normally and play a normal game eventually. Um, but yeah, these are sort of the main ideas in the Grand Prix. If you check the database here, actually, this is another useful thing. This database, which you should also have on uh, your on croissant. This you can just go through lines here and see what do people play in the Grand Prix after F4. Um, yeah, most people opt for this fianchetto line, and if you can just go for this kind of idea of just okay, bishop c4. They'll play e6, castle. Um, there's a lot of different potential lines here, like knight g7. Um, you have good chances here in this kind of a position if you just develop normally. But it's important that you follow principles and you don't take like if they play d5, for example, it's important. Okay, this one very lucky example, they've taken the pawn, but you should not take the pawn for the ideas that I mentioned before. Um, yeah, you should just follow the same principles. Just remember the position that you're trying to end up with. Know why we're trying to end up in that position. Know a couple of these potential ideas, like I showed you with um where is it? yeah, like one of these potential ideas with giving away this rook. Um, Sometimes the attack is worth a lot more than uh, than the material that you may have. So those are the main ideas in the Grand Prix. There's not many other uh, ideas here. There's I think I've talked about um, pretty much everything there is in this. Just try to remember what your position will be. What your position, what you're going to try and aim for is let me just draw this out one more time. One of your goal position. Let's just look at this. Your goal position. You play e4. They'll play whatever. You just try. If you had all the moves in the world, you just play something along these lines. Um, you'd play like you'd eventually trade this knight off for this rook. You'd go here. You'd play f5, g4, queen here, bishop here to potentially trade off the bishop, and you know get rid of this knight, and then go with the queen, bring the knight here. You have a lot of ideas. A4 to prevent a6, b5, and they play it. These are your main kind of ideas uh, in the Grand Prix, and there's not much else to say other than well, good luck. Try and play as best as you can, and really just ensure you know the idea of the position. Ensure you know the idea of what you want to achieve in the game, and know why every move is played. If your opponent takes you out and plays something a bit offbeat, and they play a bit greedy, for example, if they opt for something a bit strange, and you end up in a position like this. Let me show you this variation. Yeah, like if they play this kind of a line, you can very often punish them easily. And even if you can just win, you can be in the Grand Prix. You can even be up material and have a nice uh, position where you just like clamp down on them. They have to like have a useless bishop. You can still play aggressively. There's so many ideas, um, but it's important that you just know what you're doing uh, in this position. So yeah, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please do let me know. But until then, there's really nothing else to mention. So bye bye.